Hey, welcome to another edition of the Willie Bragg Show. I'm your host, Willie Bragg. There is a movie documentary out called What is a Woman with Matt Walsh, who works for the Daily Wire, works for Ben Shapiro and Company, which in itself is all the reason to trash the damn movie. Anything dealing with the Daily Wire, anything dealing with Ben Shapiro and all of that. It's enough to be very critical, but then it gets to be not just something to be critical of. Then you run into extremely inconsistent territory with an ideology that that I am pretty much have odds with, and that's libertarianism. I don't like libertarian economics, but there are some things that I do agree with in regard to libertarianism. But Matt Walsh has his take on libertarianism, and it's a 180 flip from my position. I'm going to play you a clip, and then I'm going to comment afterwards. Hold on a second. Is that it? No, that's it. Okay. Here we go.
Yesterday for this segment of the show, we spent approximately 4.5 hours responding to a couple of obscure libertarian YouTubers. May have seemed like overkill, but then again, if you listen frequently, you know that I could easily do an entire show on one TikTok video that annoyed me, so it's all par for the course. Today for our daily cancellation, we're going somewhere slightly less obscure, but still libertarian. I hadn't planned to dump on the libertarians so much this week, but that's the way it's working out. And I think I find libertarians so especially annoying because we have a few significant things in common, and yet ultimately they're still so wrong when it comes down to it. And that's where the frustration comes from for me. The libertarians are singing my tune when they talk about abolishing the income tax or massively decreasing the size of the federal government. They tend to be skeptical of the government education system, which is good, and protective of gun rights. They are generally pretty consistent constitutionalists. All of these things are good. They may take it a bit too far sometimes. Like, not all taxation is theft, for example, just most of it is. But still, we line up pretty closely on those issues. Things fall apart when we move from economic and strictly constitutional issues over to cultural and moral concerns. Here, libertarianism begins to quickly break apart, and the libertarian is left out in the cold, in the dark, confused, not sure which way to go. His ideology is not robust enough to account for the full scope of the human experience. He was mostly right about those economic constitutional issues, but he was right for, if not the wrong reasons, then at least incomplete reasons. He wants to pay fewer taxes and keep his guns and so on because of liberty, and by liberty he simply means his own personal ability to do whatever he wants because he wants to do it. There are fuller and sturdier reasons to be in favor of gun rights and against overtaxation, but those generally are not his reasons. And so when he encounters the deeper issues, the moral issues, he has only his kind of libertine, do what you want mentality to fall back on. This is when he starts shouting slogans like, let people enjoy things, and the government shouldn't legislate morality. Except that literally all legislation legislates morality. All laws, by definition, are rooted in a moral code. They may be wrongly rooted or rooted in the wrong moral code, but completely amoral laws would be laws passed without concern at all for whether they're actually right or wrong. Legislation that doesn't attempt to legislate morality would be, by definition, arbitrary. The libertarian doesn't seem to fully understand this fact. And as for letting people enjoy things, the fact is that enjoyment is not, in and of itself, enough to justify any act. If we're determining whether an act should be legal, or even simply whether it's good, aside from the legal question, we need to ask more than just, do people enjoy it? And when it comes to that enjoyment, we also need to reflect on the nature of the act and consider the sort of pleasure that's being derived from it. Take almost any self-destructive and harmful act, and you'll find people.
Alrighty, folks, you made What is a Woman a massive success. We're talking about the top documentary in America. It is the most streamed documentary.
People who enjoy it. That is, they take pleasure, however twisted from it. Should we simply leave people to their self-destructive pleasures, even if the pursuit of that pleasure is actually making them miserable and causing despair in the long run? These are all questions that libertarianism cannot answer and refuses to even consider. And that long preamble brings us to an article in the Libertarian Reason magazine written by writer Elizabeth Nolan Brown titled, The New Campaign for a Sex-Free Internet. It's a lengthy article that can't be fully analyzed in this segment, but the basic gist is that Brown is upset about the fact that due to rule changes over at sites like Pornhub, fewer amateur wannabe porn stars are able to whore themselves and their bodies out for a quick buck. Brown is deeply concerned that there is now a tragic scarcity of whoring on the internet. So reading now, it says, for more than a decade, both amateurs and professionals shared their sometimes sweet, sometimes weird, and often graphic sexual activity on Pornhub. Launched in 2007, not long after YouTube, and with a similar free-for-all spirit, the site represented a new wave of adult entertainment in which anyone with an internet connection could partake and anyone with a digital camera could become a star. Now, a quick sidebar here. We have already started on a precarious note with the writer's claim that the graphic sexual content on Pornhub is sometimes sweet. I would have thought...
Well, I have nothing against porn. So there is that. Now, I want to touch on what he had to talk about. We're talking about somebody who claims to be a libertarian, okay? This guy, he claims to be a libertarian, and we're talking about somebody who associate himself with neoconservatives like Glenn Beck and Ben Shapiro, who favors neoconservative wars, corporatism, and religious right agendas. That's not libertarian. It's far from it. His trash new film, "What Is a Woman," is absolutely runs contrary to what libertarianism is all about. Nobody's forcing you to love transgender people, Matt Walsh. Nobody's forcing you to do that to yourselves. Nobody's forcing you to transition yourselves. You don't like it? don't engage in it. Don't do it. You don't even have to celebrate it. Leave the transgender community alone. Just leave them alone. You can have your opinions. Leave them alone. No, you're not a libertarian. You're a neoconservative. You're a neoconservative from a pre-Trump era that's trying to masquerade yourself as something hip and new, just like Steven Crowder and people like people like that, and you're basically Dinesh D'Souza as an Americanized American. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you could take your film What's a Woman and honestly shove it up your asshole, really. And I mean, metaphorically speaking, figuratively speaking, of course, we know it's gaping because people like you have secrets to hide. And I can tell there are people like yourselves. You're so repressed and so filled with self-hatred that you lash out at other people. That's why Steven Crowder, he'll go and cross-dress and bash the transgender community. And it turned out that the reason he does that is there's a possibility he might have, something in the back of his mind where he thinks is sexy or whatever. And if that's the case, or if he has intergender dysphoria and that's what he wants, instead of bashing the transgender community, why doesn't he embrace it and join them and not bash them and just be Steven Crowder in whatever form Steven Crowder wants to be Steven Crowder instead of a bigot. Same thing with Matt Walsh. So, but what gets on my nerves are people like these people who pretend to be libertarian. And then they talk about depriving people of enjoyment. Just because it feels good doesn't mean you have to do it, and therefore the state has to intervene. And these are the same people that will lecture a liberal when they talk about trying to regulate sweets and fattening foods and whatever. And to some degree, I might even agree with them there that I don't think it's necessarily the job of the government to sit there and micromanage what you eat. I've noticed there's a little bit of that going on, and I don't even agree with that. But what's the difference between that and then people like Matt Walsh supporting the drug war, which is a hell of a lot worse than somebody regulating, whether there's enough fat content or sugar or carbs in foods or not. I think it's a whole lot worse considering what the incarceration level is in prisons and all of that. And I don't embrace either approach from liberals over nanny state liberals that believe in a nanny state without the actual nanny, or these kind of pretend libertarians will tell you, I'm a libertarian because, standard conservatism is not sexy. So libertarian sounds edgy, but then they still sound like typical Kool-Aid drinking, Heritage Foundation, neoconservative, Bush Cheney era Republicans, which we all know is shit politics. Even they know that is shit politics. And they know it. They fucking know it. And, and it's absolute garbage. And people are tired of it. And they're trying to make themselves relevant by trying to reinvent the wheel. And I'm sorry. No matter how much spice and no matter how much sugar or whatever condiments you put on a casserole filled with shit, it is still nothing but shit. And that's what these folks like Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro and Glenn Beck and all these motherfuckers have to offer. They're still offering us shit. It still tastes like the shit that Rush Limbaugh has been serving to the American people since the 1990s till the time he died last year. It is still the same 1993 Rush Limbaugh talking points, which is absolute excrement. It's diarrhea. So, And I'm going to do a video on the movie What is a Woman down the road, probably sometime later on. But don't lecture me about libertarianism, especially if you're going to go and use the term and not use it properly. I'm not a libertarian, and I'll tell you that. But someone like Ron Paul, I respect Ron Paul. I mean, I don't agree with Ron Paul on economics, or even some socialists. I don't agree with Ron Paul. But Ron Paul, he's going to tell you he's a libertarian. He's going to tell you what he believes. He's going to tell you socialism even sucks, and I disagree with Ron Paul on those things. But you know what? Ron Paul has more intelligence, and he has more integrity in his tiny little finger than this Matt Walsh guy ever did in his entire body, in his entire worthless life of living. Fuck you, Matt Walsh. Fuck you. So, that's basically where I stand. And anyway, I just wanted to go and say that. And right now, looks like we have one person here on the chat line. We had Hot Retarded Chicks. If you're still there, hello, how are you doing? And I'm going to make this video very short because I have to go to work in a little bit. I'm a little budgeting for time today. If you like what you heard, press like and comment. If you disagree, we'll comment anyway. Feel free to share the content on this channel. As the First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you to create your own platform and utilize it, because we're, in fact, the muckrakers of our time. Hit that notification bell, hit that subscribe button. And remember, we have a class war to wage and to fight this economic inequality that's going on, to fight this crony capitalism. We also need to be committed to peace, because all war is a racket to serve the military industrial complex and defense contractors. We need to fight for civil liberties, which means racial equality, religious equality, equal rights for all religions, including those that do not believe. Rights for everybody across the board, regardless of gender, sexual orientation, whatever circumstances in life. And we need to fight for all free speech, because when we fight for all free speech, we're also defending our own damn free speech. And that means we need to fight for freedom of the press, because as long as people like Julian Assange is in prison, none of us are free. And as long as Julian Assange is, kept captive, we're all Julian Assange. So until next time, I'm Willie Bragg. We will talk next time. Y'all take care. And I'm going to conclude by saying music. Have a great day.